Welcome to Garden Plants with Jim Putnam. Let's talk Temple Bells Pieris. This is a Pieris japonica called Temple Bells. This is a really fantastic ornamental plant. Has great dark green foliage, has these really long lasting flower buds on racemes here. We're shooting this between Christmas and New Year's, and these flowers start to show up earlier in the fall and stay on here, and then this thing blooms super early in the spring with these white flowers that are again on these kind of weeping racemes. It's not the longest flowering thing in the world, but it presents these flower buds for a very long period of time. Blooms when almost nothing else is blooming. This is a really early spring, late winter flowering shrubs. As soon as the white flowers are kind of fading on it, that's when the new growth begins on this plant, and it has this burgundy red foliage that comes out on it. This is a great four-season plant. It's got this beautiful green foliage when it's not doing anything else. It has these flower buds that seem to last forever, flowers that are incredibly showy, that the pollinators absolutely love, and then this foliage show in the spring and early summer that just has another wow moment. So this is a great four-season plant. Pieris is an ericaceous plant. A lot of these ericaceous plants have really shallow root system. Most of them like acid soils and kind of moist, well-drained conditions. So this is the same group of plants that azaleas are in, blueberries are in, and when the flowers open on them is when you'll really see that they're related to blueberries, because they have this kind of bell-shaped weeping flower that's on a raceme like this. That's when you'll really know that they're related. You'll see on tags, these are going to say 3 to 4 feet in height, 3 to 4 feet in width. I've actually seen Temple Bells quite a bit bigger than that if it's in a spot that it's kind of happy in the garden. And that spot is going to be in a part shade to shade condition. These are really interesting in that they're leafy evergreen plants, but they're hardy all the way up to zone 5. There's not a lot of leafy evergreen plants that are hardy up there. We just don't see a whole lot of options for having leaves on the plants during really cold period of times. Typically we see conifers and deciduous plants. They're hardy all the way up to zone 4B with protection, but definitely zone 5 to 8 in the ground, and again part shade to shade conditions. I said part shade or shade conditions. As you go further north up to zone 5, definitely can take sunnier locations in those areas. So these would prefer moist, well-drained conditions, or slightly moist, well-drained conditions. So if you have clay soil like us, we'll plant them a little bit higher than we plant everything else, similar to the way we would plant azaleas or camellias, any of those types of plants that would prefer, again, they don't want to be completely dry, but they also don't want to be in any kind of wet conditions at all. So good drainage. Any place that an azalea or camellia would be happy is going to be a spot where one of these Pieris will thrive. In colder areas, you're definitely going to want to protect them from drying winds. So this is not a plant you're going to put out on the edge of your property. So it is a leafy evergreen that you can grow, but that doesn't mean that you can put it out in a 30-mile-an-hour winter wind with the ground frozen. That's not going to be an ideal place for it. These are great accent plants, perfect for a shady foundation planting, a Japanese garden, a border, but again, not in a really windy open space necessarily, but if you want a low hedging plant, that's kind of perfect for that. And any kind of woodland garden, that's where we have our Pieris japonicas planted at our house. Temple Bells Pieris is pretty low maintenance plant overall. If they need any pruning at all, and typically they grow pretty full on their own as long as they're not kind of overcrowded. They tend to grow and get bigger in time in a very, not completely formal, but reasonably formal habit. These have been crowded a bit, and so you can see in a nursery setting where this one needs some pruning done on it and spaced a little bit more after it flowers in the early spring. So if they're crowded like this, they may stretch a bit on you, but they can be pruned after they flower, and that pruning after they flower will probably give you some additional new branching and some of that more of that red growth later in the season. Again, these are acid-loving plants for sure, and so if your pH is towards 7, you might want to use holly tone or some sort of fertilizer for acid-loving plants if you don't have a lower pH in your garden. If you do have a low pH, ours is 5.8. These would probably prefer something in the upper 4s or low 5s, but 5.8 is fine. We'll just use plant tone or some sort of just regular organic fertilizer in the late winter, early spring on these. Be careful not to throw the fertilizer on them while you have open flowers on them. It might damage the flowers. This is flowering typically at about the time we're fertilizing our entire garden. It's one of the earlier flowering things. You will see some leaf spot on these, but in general, not too bad. This is a plant though, it doesn't like our dry shade conditions at the house as much as other things. And it took us about 3 years to really get one established in the dry shade. So if you know that about the space you're putting it in, you're gonna wanna do some ongoing watering for a while until it gets established. But if you're in an area that gets kind of regular rainfall, once it's established, you won't need a lot of ongoing water, but you know, it's a plant that would be higher on my list to check than others if it was in what you thought was a drier shade condition. But this is Temple Bells Pieris japonica. I grew these for years at my nursery. When this thing's putting on a show in the spring, I couldn't bring them out to my retail space fast enough. When the new growth was coming out on it and they were bright red, I couldn't get them out to the retail space fast enough. In the fall, you know, as these you know, this anticipation of these flowers was happening, I couldn't sell them fast enough. It's just a great ornamental plant that adds a lot of 12-month interest to the garden. Thanks for watching.